You just heard Big Enough to Be a Mountain from Kentucky's very own Tiffany Williams, who is making her name as a songwriter down in Nashville. You're listening to WUKY 91.3 FM. We are listener-supported radio, and I'm Silas House, your host here on the porch. Today, I'm so happy to be talking to Mary Laura Philpott on the phone. Mary Laura is the author of a highly acclaimed new essay collection called I Miss You When I Blink, which takes the reader through writing about the occasionally daunting pressures of being a modern woman in essays that are poignant, vulnerable, and most often hilarious. Mary Laura's writing has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times, the Paris Review, too many other places to mention. She is also the very charming and Emmy-winning co-host of the literary interview show A Word on Words, which can be seen on Nashville Public Television, and you can also find it on YouTube. She lives in Nashville. Hi, Mary Laura. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, Silas. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I know that you have been all over the place on book tour recently and are so busy right now, so we're really glad to have you.
This is fun.
The best thing about the listeners of On the Porch is that they are readers. So
I love that.
I knew you would. So with that in mind, why don't you tell them what you want them to know about I Miss You When I Blink?
Oh, what a great open-ended question. Here's what I want you to know about I Miss You When I Blink. If you are a person who has even a touch of perfectionism or type A tendencies, and you like to get things right in life, this might be a book for you. If you are a person who is at a decision point in your life, whether you're 22 and you're coming out of school trying to decide what you're going to be, or you're 52 and you're thinking about reinventing yourself and starting a different career or getting in or out of a relationship, this might be the book for you, because that's what I'm writing about here is reinvention and all the times in my life that I came to a point where I said, okay, I made the choices that brought me to this place, but I'm not sure this is the place for me anymore. Now what do I do?
So I love the title, and
thank you.
And it's just you bring so many layers to it. So can you just tell us about the title and the way it's become a mantra for you?
Yeah, I love the title too. I can say that without bragging because I didn't make it up. I stole it. It is from. I didn't steal it. I asked politely to borrow it. It was made up by my son, who is now a teenager. I have two kids who are bigger than me, but back when they were little, and he was about 6, he was drawing on a notepad, and he was making up a little poem, and it was like, I miss you in the sink, I miss you in the skating rink, I miss you when I blink. And I took that piece of paper that he wrote that little poem on, and I stuck it on the wall of my office. And day after day, I would walk down to my office to do my work as a freelance copywriter, and every day I would see that there. And over the years, it stuck in my mind the way a song lyric will stick in your head. And you know how sometimes a song can be about one thing, but your brain kind of turns it into something about yourself?
Mm-hmm.
It started to mean to me not just, what a cute little phrase, I miss you when I blink, what an adorable, precocious 6-year-old I have. But the when I blink part came to represent time and how fast it moves and how it keeps moving faster, which is an obsession of mine. I just desperately wish someone to invent a time machine. And the I miss you part came to represent what I missed about myself, not just my past self, like the person I was 20 years ago or 10 years ago, but also the person I meant to be and things I meant to do but didn't quite do. And as I, got older and got further into adulthood and got into sort of a period of melancholy in my life where I wasn't totally happy with my day-to-day existence, that phrase became a touchstone, like, I miss myself as time is going past. But if I can look back at who I've been and what I've done, I can figure out what to do to go forward.
Right. I think we all have that moment where we realize we've lost ourselves, who we used to be. So I thought that's such a relatable part of the book.
It sneaks up on you.
Right. Do you know that song from the musical Waitress?
She Used to Be Mine?
She Used to Be Mine, yes. That reminds me
my
of that.
God,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, we played that earlier in the show in tribute to this idea of I miss you when I blink. So.
Oh, thank you. That song, I once drove down from Nashville to the Mississippi Festival in Jackson, which is a 6-hour drive, and there is a long portion of that drive where no radio stations come in,
Mm-hmm.
and so I had to, blast music from my phone in the cup holder of my car, and I had that song on repeat, just belting it, and I don't know what was going through my hormonal system at that time, but sobbing. I love that song.
Me too. It's one that I sing in my car as well. It's a good one for that.
we should do it sometime.
You mentioned the idea of being a perfectionist, and it's something that you do talk about quite a bit in the book. You're very honest about that, and so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it is a thing about me, as I say in the book. How every dish has some flavor that comes through strongly, the cilantro, if you will, and that is my cilantro. Like, that is the thing about me that even as I become more self-aware of it and I become better able to manage it, it will never change. I am a person, whether by nature or nurture, wants to get everything right. And there is some little scrap in my brain that believes if I just can get every answer right to everything I'm doing, I will earn the love and approval of everyone around me, and I will earn my right to be a human being on this earth. And I know that that's twisted. I know that's not right, but it is still how my brain works. And it plays out in my life, and I write about this in the book. It plays out in some funny ways, like I'm like always on a game show nobody else can see. Like, I'm playing by these rules and making these little bargains and, trying to do everything just right. But it also can be sad, Yes. It can be sad, and it can be frustrating and limiting, because in adult life, most things don't have one clear right answer. And sometimes there is a clear right answer to what you should do in a given situation, and it's the right thing for you then, and it might be the right thing for you a year later, but maybe 5 years later you look up and that's not the right thing for you anymore. And if you're a type A-ish, perfectionist-ish person, feeling like, oh no, this thing I did with great intentions and great purpose isn't right for me anymore, that feels catastrophic.
Yes, I have a child who's a perfectionist, and it really makes life very difficult in lots of ways. He's an artist, and he will paint these paintings that I just think are, of course, I'm his father, so I just think they're works of genius, and then he'll paint over them and say, no, it's awful.
Oh,
and start
that
all
combination of being an artist and a perfectionist is particularly difficult.
Exactly, yes. Right.
It's tough.
Well, speaking of children, another thing that comes up in the book is, you put it this way, quote, when you realize your child no longer needs you to be his daily sidekick. I've been going through that myself with both of my children in college, and, they're actually, have their own lives, which I always wanted for them to have, but now I'm not so happy about it,
I know.
because I want them, and I know they'll come back eventually, but that is such a hard thing as a parent to go through. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It is. It's like you say, it's exactly the right thing. If you've done your job right as a parent, they go off and have lives that are away from you, and you feel proud of them, and it feels great. And I'm not quite there yet. That's right ahead of me on this train track of life. So mine are teenagers, but they haven't left the nest yet, but I know it's coming, and it just haunts me. This is why I write in the book about how desperately I want a time machine.
Yes.
It isn't that I want to go back and reset the clock and go back to when they're babies and be in that time permanently. It's not that. I love who they are right now. I love everything about my life right now. It's great. But I do wish I could bounce back and forth. Like, I wish I could say, okay, pause right now with my teenage children who are about to leave the nest, and let me go back for just a day to when I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and all we did all day was sit on the floor of our kitchen. And I was their world and they were my world. Let me just do that for a day. I don't want to go back and do that permanently, because that got really suffocating and tough day after day after day. But I would love to be able to move back and forth And I guess in some ways writing autobiographical essays is something that helps me do that a little bit, revisit those times.
Yeah, I'm a fiction writer, and one thing that I do in my novels is I will preserve little moments in time. Like for instance, in my second book, I have a scene where a child is running out into a field of wildflowers, and I wanted to preserve this moment I really had with my daughter. So that is a great thing about writing and the way it can preserve those moments and allow us to revisit them.
That's really cool. That makes me want to go back and read, pick up Southernmost and have you walk me through it and tell me where are the little moments that you plucked out of life and preserved in there.
Yeah, when you're spending 6 or 7 years with a book, you have to entertain yourself in some ways.
Right.
So those are my little Easter eggs for myself in there.
I love that.
Well, often your essays are so funny. I find it very hard to write comedy. I would like to think that I'm pretty funny, one-on-one or talking to people in real life, but on the page, I'm so serious. And and I find it really hard to be funny on the page. Is that something that just naturally comes up for you when you sit down to write?
It is. Humor is my coping mechanism. And a lot of what this book is about are my obsessions and my things that actually make me very sad or that make me angry or that I'm conflicted about. And because I am dwelling in all those things in this book, my coping mechanism kicks in. So that's why you get the humor. It shows up as the little counter-argument to every dark thing that I say, and my brain has always worked like that. I did actually strip some of the comedy out of this book. In earlier drafts, there were more one-liners and more moments where I would say something sort of dark or poignant and then immediately, ta-da, hit it with a joke after, because that is how my brain works. But when I went back and read it, and when I read it with my editor, we could see that not every bit of how my mind works needs to be how the book works. So we pulled some of that out, which I think was good. I hope that ended up with a good balance.
I love working with an editor. I love that collaboration that happens.
Yes.
Did you have that experience as well?
Oh my gosh, yes. I love being edited by a good editor.
Me too.
I had an interesting conversation. I think this was actually on another podcast at some point this month, but someone said, as a perfectionist, is it hard for you to accept being edited? And I said, no, as a perfectionist, what I want more than anything is to work with a good editor, because when you get your work as good as you can get, and you've taken it as far as you can take it, to have somebody come in and go, guess what? I'm going to show you the secret hidden door. If you open up this, it can even get better.
Exactly.
It's wonderful.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah, when people talk to me about how much they hate being edited and how much they hate, working with an editor, I always think, well, that's because you haven't worked with a really good one, because they make it so much better.
Right. It is certainly frustrating to work with a not great editor, which I have done a couple of times on individual pieces. And that is frustrating when somebody doesn't pick up what you're putting down, and they're like, this is coming across wrong and you need to cut this. And in your gut that that's wrong. That is frustrating. But luckily, that is not the experience I had with this book.
We're visiting with author Mary Laura Philpott here on The Porch. I'm your host, Silas House, and you're listening to WUKY 91.3 FM listener-supported radio. Well, there's a really great essay in the book that involves 9/11. At one point, you write, as the war on terror raged on, the world spun into a state of heightened unrest. The longer we lived it, it seemed, the more terribly human beings treated each other. The nightly news became more frightening, not less. End quote. I would venture to say that these are even more frightening times in a different way. But has writing always been something that has helped you to survive the feeling of chaos in the world and in your life?
Definitely. I mean, in some ways it's frustrating because there is no way to write your way around what is happening in the world. Like, we do currently live in chaotic and often disturbing times, and there's nothing I can write that will make that not be true. but I can at least write through what I'm seeing, I can write through what I'm hearing, and I can write through what I'm feeling. And usually I understand my own thought processes better once I have written them down.
Mm-hmm. You talk very honestly in the book about depression and the pressures of modern life. Was it difficult for you to reveal some of that?
It was. I definitely saved it for last. Like, I wrote every other essay I could write until, I had that narrative arc, like, almost locked up, except for, 3 important holes without which you could not build this arc. I didn't really want to go into that stuff, but at the same time, I couldn't tell this story without it. This is an essay collection. You could, in theory, pick it up and put it down and read one essay at a time and be fine. But if you read it from start to finish, it reads like a memoir. That's the idea, is that there is this narrative arc to it.
Yes.
And if I just left those pieces out, it wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't. The story wouldn't have the tension it had in real life, which is, all our lives have stakes. The stakes are high, even in just regular everyday life, and none of that would make sense without writing about the darker times. So I did finally make myself do it, and as I was doing it, I told myself, you know what? Somebody else who is going to read this book right now feels the way I felt in the things that are happening in this essay, and putting it on paper might help somebody. So that helped a little.
Yeah. Now, I know that you love Brandi Carlile. You mentioned her a couple of times in the book, and I love her so much, too. I used to go see her when she would play these tiny little venues in Nashville and Louisville, and now she's on the Grammys, and everybody knows about her. What do you like about her?
Do you think she knows how much we love her, Silas?
I hope so.
I hope she listens to this show. I saw her once in a teeny show in Eddie's Attic in Decatur, Georgia. Here's what I love about her. Her songwriting, first of all, is fantastic. What she and the twins write and the way they put it. I'm fascinated by song structure. I'm not a songwriter, but I'm a songwriting appreciator. So I love the writing. I mean, her voice is lovely. She's a great performer. She interacts with the audience so well. She is someone who, when you are in her presence and listening to her sing, you not only feel like, oh, hey, I'm connecting with this real human person right in front of me, but you also feel like you're in the presence of just talent on a whole other level.
And
her songs, they get richer as you listen to them. There are albums that are years and years and years old that even now I will listen to and suddenly notice something I've never noticed before.
Right.
And that's amazing.
And she gives back so much. She's such a charitable person. Yeah, listen at us. But do you have a favorite song by her? Is there one that you could pick as a favorite?
Oh, my gosh.
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
I have 10. I have 10 favorite Brandi Carlile songs. My first favorite Brandi Carlile song is it called Tragedy?
Yes.
Is that the one?
That's a great one.
Yeah. And there's a version of it with cello,
the cello
in the background. I remember the first time I heard that song going, what is this? That was the first song I ever heard of hers, going, what is this? Who is she? What is happening here? And I loved that whole album. I mean, I've loved everything she's done since.
Yeah, it's that emotion.
She keeps it fresh as a performer too. Like she changes up what she does. You're not hearing the same song again and again and again.
Right. One thing we always like to talk about on here is the music you're loving right now. So what are you loving right now besides Brandi?
Oh, man. I've been going through, and I think this is not just me. This is a cultural moment. I'm going through some sort of Fleetwood Mac retrospective phase.
Yeah, they never, ever get old. I never get tired of them.
They never get old. That same drive to Mississippi that I was talking about, when I stopped sobbing to the song from Waitress 100 times in a row, I put on Fleetwood Mac. I recently rediscovered my love of their song Hold Me with the little piano at the beginning.
Yes.
It's so good. So I love them. I love, there's an epigraph at the beginning of my book from the Decemberists, and it's a song called The Singer Addresses His Audience.
Right.
And it's a song about a boy band. And this lead singer of the boy band, who has gotten famous and made his reputation on this particular type of music, wants to branch out and be different. and try something new. And he's saying to his audience, we know we belong to you, and you've built your lives around us, but we have to change. You have to let us change. And I took that little snippet and, of course, completely reinterpreted it as, something about modern life. But I love that song. I love one of the songs that I would listen to when I was recording the audiobook for Miss You When I Blink, and I had to record those chapters about the really dark, kind of depressing stuff. What I would listen to at the end of the day after recording was the Decemberist song, Everything is Awful.
Mm-hmm.
It is hilarious. It's this really upbeat, like, you listen to the beginning and you're like, oh, this sounds like a jingle. Like, what is this going to be? And the chorus is, everything is awful. And it's one of my favorite songs ever.
I will look that one up.
Look it up. It's wonderful.
What about books? In your role as a true Renaissance woman, you're not only a TV show host and an essayist, but you also work with Parnassus Books, the great indie bookstore in Nashville. So we're always looking for book recommendations on here. Oh, my gosh. There are so many. This is one of those questions that I should be able to answer succinctly, but I always end up paralyzed by so much good stuff. I was thinking before we started this call, like, what can I recommend that's just about to come out so that, like, people will hear this and then they can go get these books? There are a couple books coming out in May, I'm pretty sure it's May, that I love, and they're both memoirs. One is called Once More We Saw Stars by Jason Green. Okay. And it is about, and you may have read about this in the news when it happens, he's a writer. He was in New York. His toddler daughter was killed in a freak accident. She was sitting on a bench in New York with her grandmother, and a piece of concrete just fell off the building they were sitting in front of and landed on her and killed her. And going into it, it's going to be a sad book. I mean, it's a heartbreaking thing to write through, but his emotional range in this book is so much wider than you expect. And he writes about forgiveness and moving on and how do you hold grief in your life. And it's just a stunning, stunning book. And then another one, totally different feel, but a memoir that also will be out in May, is Out East by John Glenn. Okay. And John, he's another New York writer. He actually works in publishing, but he's younger than me by a good bit. And he writes about this summer when he was, I want to say 27, 26-ish, but, an adult, a young adult, but an adult. This summer where he and a bunch of his friends had a timeshare house out in Montauk. And it was the summer that he realized he is gay. And he writes about this summer with such what looks on the surface like breezy conversational language, but it is so carefully, artfully done. He is telling this story in this fun, summertimey way, but also getting into really, really deep emotional territory of this, this first crush and how it felt and how to realize, I'm an adult person and I thought I was fully cooked and I've just learned something major about myself. And it's just it's a fun, happy, meaningful, just great book. Like that should be in everybody's beach bag. So those are two from May if I were to recommend. Good to know. Good recommendations. Thank you. Well, in conclusion, I want to remind everyone to go out and before you get those books she just recommended, you need to get a copy of I Miss You When I Blink. It's by Mary Laura Philpott. It is available wherever fine books are sold. It's really everywhere. And I'll recommend that everyone also follow Mary Laura on Instagram, mostly because you'll get to see her two wonderful dogs a lot. That's I get my fix of them. What is your Instagram handle? It's just my name, Mary Laura Philpott. That's it. Everybody look for that. And tell us a little bit about those dogs. They pop up periodically on my Instagram, and I think they are the stars of the Instagram. Like, no one cares about everything else that I'm putting up there. And then once a month, I'll be like, look at my dog, and people go crazy. So I have two dogs. I have a beagle named Eleanor Roosevelt, and she is absolutely beautiful and an utter terror. She terrorizes our household. And then we have a little yellow mutt named Woodstock. We have a beagle too, so they're a lot of fun, but they keep you busy.
Oh my gosh. What's your beagle's name? Remind me.
Ari.
Ari.
Yeah. And my daughter named him it's a character in the Royal Tenenbaums, the film.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're in love with him, and so you can see him on my Instagram all the time too. So
I love it.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being with us today. It's a pleasure as always, and your book is just wonderful. I'm so glad it's out there. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thanks to all of you for joining us here on The Porch. Until next time, be good to one another. Here in honor of Mary Laura is the eternal Fleetwood Mac.